Good day, I am Rachel May Isagon, and our topic is about Reyes Miguel Paolo's El Filibusterismo and Jose Rizal as a science fictionist. Introduction. Science fiction is a rare genre in the Philippine literature. Most noted works in this category are critical, typological, or historical overviews. Roberto Año asserts that the first work of science fiction written by a Filipino is Mateo Cruz Cornelius' Dr. Satan in 1945. While Timothy Montes considers the Apollo Centennial by Gregorio Brillantes in 1972. Other critics such as Barrion Posadas have written what can be referred to as problems and prospects in the Philippine science fiction pieces. Posadas' 2001 essay, Rethinking Philippine Science Fiction, which deals partly with possible shifts in Philippine science fiction signaled by and following the creations of the short-lived Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Futuristic Fiction. So, a lot of critics have stated that there have been hardly any well-published science fictionists in the Philippines who refer to themselves exclusively as science fictionists or science fiction writers alone. One of the authors mentioned in the essay is Dr. Jose Rizal. Although not classified as science fiction, his pieces possess the necessary elements that fall under this category, such as cognitive estrangement effect that results from creating an objective reality or alternate universe. In this paper, Rizal is said to have transcended true literary genres as his novel El Feliz representation of scientists or science adheres to the ideological formulation of the new Philippine science fiction tradition. Um, Jose Rizal's El Filibusterismo famously depicts the difficulties faced by adherents of scientific thoughts in the Philippines during the late 19th century. A nationalist novel by an author who has been called the first Filipino, its nature as a social document of the late 19th century Philippines is often emphasized. El Filibusterismo is the sequel to the first novel, No Limitang Hire, or Touch Me Not. El Filibusterismo, however, is a much darker book reflecting Rizal's increasing anger at Spanish colonialism in the Philippines and frustration that his hopes for peaceful reform seemed bleak. El Filibusterismo also had many events of murder, sexual abuse, and suicide. Thinking men. The word science first appeared in the Philly in this declaration by the Franciscan friar Padre Salvi in a conversation with the newspaperman Van Zybe while they are aboard the steamship Tapo. The above is a tirade against the men of science issued by a friar, a member of a community where men of the cloth wield the authority of absolute monarchs in miniature. These friars in El Fili condemned the men of science for their trust in theories reasoning. Later in the novel, Father Salvi's belief in the forces beyond human comprehension costs him his dignity as he fainted during Leeds' show. So, Padre Milon has considerable scientific knowledge, at least in comparison to most of his colleagues at the Philly's Pontifical and Royal University of Santo Tomas. Still, he was hardly convinced of the veracity of knowledge born from scientific inquiry. He forces his students to memorize the contents of the textbooks he uses in class, though he makes little effort to ensure that they understand what they commit to memory. Students are not allowed to use the equipment in the university laboratory, as these are for display only. The laboratory exists solely for the sake of visitors from Spain so that they can remark upon how the Indios have an excellent laboratory yet have yet to produce a local version of famed scientists' work. So these friars resemble the Shahyar in Edgar Allan Poe's meta-science fiction story, The Thousand and Second Tales of Scheherazade in 1850, in that these characters are dismissive of new scientific discoveries, adherent as they are to what they have long been familiar with. Resolute believers. So this basically tackles about how elfily characters have their own beliefs and how it affects their lives. In case of the Cochero, he was hopeful for change, but it is impossible, although he still believed that change will come. Basilio, on the other hand, believes that it was nonsense and it will not happen. So, in case of Huli, she believes in God, but all her faith shattered when a series of misfortune happened and thus she commits suicide. Additional information, Dr. Jose Rizal wrote Pastel stating his stand that reasoning rather than faith was the foundation of his belief in God. Dr. Jose Rizal, however, was clear that he was no agnostic. Quote, "More than by faith, more by reasoning and necessity, I firmly believe that a creator exists." Unquote.
Hi, I am Lei Maramat and I am here to present to you my part. My part is the scientific superior alien. To summarize this part, the revelation of someone really should hardly come as a surprise to those who know their innoli. Simon is Crisostomo Ibarra, the idealistic hero of the Noli. Now in the villainous costume, Edmond Dantes turned into the Count of Monte Cristo, albeit with a taste for the anarchy. Vicente Rafael is correct in emphasizing the role of money in Simon's mission. Simon's wealth is an instrument of his will, necessary to show crime and insight. Money means for someone to be epitopless in human form. What Rafael does not mention is that Simon's mastery of science also plays a crucial role in his plan to realize his revenge. As an early manifestation of Simon's scientific superiority can be found in the first chapter of the novel. The Phyllis narrator tells us that Simon wears numerous tinted eyeglasses to shield his eyes from the light of the sun. The narrator further tells us that Simon's eyewear gives him the aspect of a blind man or one of defective eyesight, implying that Simon does not wear glasses to address any particular vision problem. Another display of Simon's technological superiority. It can be found in chapter 10, Wealth and Misery. In this chapter, Simon converses the Cabesan tales about the bandits that abound in the barrios. Tales tell Simon that these bandits have firearms that shoot fire. Simon then shows Tales that his Smith & Wesson revolver can shoot also fire. He targets therefore accurately hits the nut and the Palmera de Banga, some 200 paces away. Simon's sunglasses and revolver are some of novel's lesser scientific wonders, 12 decidedly minor achievements when considered alongside the more remarkable devices described in the novel. The time thumb in the pomegranate lamp. Anderson states that none of the bombs in the aforementioned event were anything like Simon's pomegranate. Rizal's ability to mentally conjure such a potentially efficient terrorist device ought to earn him a place among those who dreamed up realistic devices of mass annihilator in 20th century science fiction. Benedict Anderson dedicates significant segment of his article Nitroglycerin in the Pomegranate to disguise a complex link between the statue of Sphinx in Rizal, Huymans Abors, a novel on decadence that the highly educated Rizal probably knew about, with the use of Sphinx as the logos where the side intersects with underside in the Philly. He notes how there are many thematic and tropical similarities in the two novels that he found difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence. The Sphinx is only one variation of the classic speaking skull illusion in his book. Nickel described a number of similarities. Perhaps Rizal chose the Sphinx variety because it alludes to ancient Egyptians who were ruled for centuries by theocrats, much like Rizal's people. Indeed, the Sphinx monologue sends chill down the spine of one friar who notes the similarity between the ghost story with the Crisostomo Ibarra. This friar faints in the room to follow suit. However, the Sphinx monologue contains a statement that differentiates the rule of ancient Egypt from the Castilian colonizer of the Philippines. The Sphinx described the ruler of ancient Egypt as monopolizers of science. The cult of science. Basilio initially adheres to a faith distinct from that Julie. What makes the belief system he admires to atypical is the fact that it is without a godly center, as revealed in the first of many one-on-one conversation that Basilio has with someone. While one mentor of Victor Frankenstein readily admits that belief system invalidates by science, were nevertheless precursors of scientific Basilio seemed to completely abhor the unscientific. For instances, Basilio described the holy water in the church front to be source of disease, contrary to the popular belief that such as water is curative.